The all-American half pounder, 2 pure beef patties, lettuce, tomato.
Singles going steady.
This is Singles Going Steady, the podcast dedicated to exploring great singles with a particular eye to the punk, new wave, and DIY eras of the last century. I'm Adrienne Meddock.
And I'm Steve McGowan. We are in a band, the Beef People, from North and South Carolina. We released a single in 1986 on our own label, Zub Records Company Limited. But we are record collectors and passionate, especially about the expression of pop music perfection that is the single recording. Exploring the mystery of what makes for a great single is what propelled us to begin this podcast. And what's our single today, Adrienne?
Well, it is Marshall Crenshaw. We're going back to the past, and Marshall Crenshaw, Whenever You're on My Mind, from his sophomore album, Field Day.
Awesome. This is Singles Going Steady 006. Marshall Crenshaw, Whenever You're on My Mind. So this record came out in 1983.
Yes.
We were both big fans of the first Marshall Crenshaw record, which had a very, very Buddy Holly type vibe.
Yes, and he had the Buddy Holly look, and of course he was later in Peggy Sue Got Married, the movie,
as Buddy
actually
Holly.
playing Buddy Holly.
And wasn't he John Lennon in Beatlemania as well?
Yes, I mean, but prior to his recording career,
right,
he was on Broadway, or at least in production, as John Lennon in Beatlemania.
And I think we would both agree that Marshall is one of those people who's kind of like Nick Lowe, in a way, kind of a scholar of rock. He writes about rock. He knows his rock from the beginning.
Yes.
And he kind of lives and breathes it.
And gives attention. He's always covered great sort of hidden gems, brought attention to other great songwriters, sometimes not so great songwriters. We're the B-side of the single.
The jungle rock B-side is...
it's an acquired taste,
forgettable.
I think. Yes. It would be forgettable, except for people like Marshall Crenshaw, who's like, this deserves a little attention.
Exactly. So he lives and breathes it. He's a super great songwriter and an amazing singer, amazing guitar player. Should we go ahead and listen to a little bit?
Yeah, let's listen to it.
The song is called Whenever You're on My Mind. It was the first single from his second album, Field Day, in 1983. Marshall Crenshaw.
Strangers' eyes in the crowd flash past.
were talking earlier, and we, of course, saw him at different shows during that time. And I can't remember if it was immediately after the first album or, right around the time that the second album was released. I saw him in a small club in Raleigh. And he was just tremendous, three-piece.
Yes.
There's nothing like a stripped-down three-piece rock combo to just, knock it out of the park when, everyone's playing their part. And that was back when his brother was playing drums.
Right.
And he had this very not of the time looking bass player. The bass player was kind of an anomalous looking fellow,
kind of new wavy.
Yeah,
yes.
but also sort of slick. Like maybe he would be at home on The Sopranos. I was kind of like one of these things is not like the other, but what a great player.
Right.
And I've seen Marshall many times. And he just has never lost a step. The quality of the songwriting is still just tremendous. And I know he has recently gone on a subscription model, releasing a series of EPs.
Yes.
By subscription. And it's just great that he's
connecting with the fans.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to some of his releases from the aughts or whatever we call that decade, some incredibly high-level work there.
Yeah, I saw them at right around the same period in Columbia at Strider's, and it was just a fantastic show. He was really good. He was playing a Shoreline Gold Stratocaster, which I'd never seen before. I think it was an old one, and he just played the hell out of it, and I remember clearly him doing at the end just an unbelievably good version of Chuck Berry's "Brown-Eyed Handsome Man." Just killed it. He was amazing. But let's talk about this single.
Okay.
Whenever You're on My Mind. One of the things I think the record company Warner Brothers was trying to break him, as they say, and I think they did break him in a different way, but. They went from the stripped-down production on the first album, and they got the famous Steve Lillywhite to produce the second album, Field Day. And he is Steve Lillywhite's famous for doing U2 and XTC, and he's known for the big production, lots of echo, lots of reverb, lots of big drums, and you can definitely hear that on this single. It's kind of drowned in all that.
But I don't think it drowns it in a bad way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it still serves the song.
Yes, I agree. It doesn't sound out of date now when you listen to it.
No, it's not.
A good song is a good song.
Some of that 80s stuff,
is very
it's
much,
just
yes.
carbon dated.
Yeah, I agree. But, they went big with Steve Lillywhite, and I believe there was a video for this song that was on MTV. I vaguely remember it. Didn't get a lot of airplay, but this is a great record, Field Day, and this is one of the better singles that I own.
Yeah, and I think just sort of about Marshall in general, he's a great appreciator of others' works, and I'm thinking particularly on one of those more recent recordings, he covered Grant Hart.
Yes, from Who's Could
2541, and he recognized what a stellar song that was, and did a wonderful version of it, and sort of led me back to Grant Hart.
Yeah. I think he did the same thing with the Volcano Sun song too.
Oh, well, all the great bands do that.
So he knows a good song when he hears it, and I remember him doing an old Arthur Alexander song, "Soldier of Love," which was one that the Beatles used to do. And I remember hearing his version, and I don't know if it's on a record, but it's just...
I think it might be on the first record.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's so good. He knows a good song when he hears it, and he writes good songs.
Right, but they're not derivative. They're it's not like he writes in the style of Marshall Crenshaw.
Yes, it's very classic, very timeless, very poppy. Great stuff.
And sort of to go back to the last installment of this podcast, I've seen Marshall Crenshaw with Los Straitjackets as his backing band.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was great. And I was kind of crossing my fingers that, with his unerring sense of history and appropriateness, that we get to hear Cruel to Be Kind, right? Because
Yes.
they were currently, recording their own version of that for What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Los Straitjackets. And there was a great version with them playing and with Marshall singing the Nick Lowe penned song. So
He did do that?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I would love to have seen that.
Yeah, it was great.
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to talk just a moment about the best show I saw Crenshaw do, which was at what's known as Little Wolf Trap in Lexington, Virginia. It's the Lime Kiln, so it's an outdoor theater. And it was, I think, with a cello and maybe a bass player. It was an unusual arrangement. The three of them under the stars, outside in the autumn, and it was just one of the most spectacular things I've ever experienced.
Did he do a cover of Walk Away Renee by the Left Bank?
I've heard him do that. And I think he did it there.
Yeah,
but
I
it was just
imagine the
one of
cello would
those
work with that.
weeping openly sort of experiences.
Yes, just beautiful, right?
And I'm just torn out of the frame, and then walking out of the show, there he was, and I was like, of course, too much of a fangirl to even say hello.
Okay, speaking of Where's Marshall now?
Marshall, currently, and who knows when you're listening to this, but we're recording this in August of 2018, and Marshall is touring the country with the Smithereens as their lead singer.
Yeah, Pat D'Annunzio unfortunately passed away. So that sounds like a really good combination, actually.
Yeah, I think that was a wise choice.
Yeah. So, is it time for recommendations?
Well, I think we got two things we got to do.
Okay.
We need to talk about who we would like to hear, or who we could hear covering the song, whether living, dead, fictional, or imaginary. And maybe imaginary.
Yeah. Well, we listened to somebody covering a Marshall Crenshaw song, and we kind of wished it was imaginary.
Exactly. It was kind of hallucinogenic, I think.
Go ahead and tell them.
Oh, yeah. It's Bette Midler doing You're My Favorite Waste of Time.
Hey, look it up on the YouTubes.
And waste your time.
It's kind of...
it's Bette Midler. It's Bette Midler. Nothing against Bette. She's doing the Bette thing.
She is definitely doing it.
And she's doing it to Marshall Crenshaw, sort of maybe against his will.
What did she say? What did you say? She gets to the bones of the song?
Yeah, and crushes them into
the bones,
a fine paste.
Into a powder. We were talking about this off microphone, as they say, and the only person I could hear singing whenever you're on my mind is John Lennon. I mean, it's just one of those classic singer things. I would love to hear that. Unfortunately, that won't happen, but
that's the imaginary. So it's both imaginary and the no longer with us singer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's
well, let's recommend something.
Yeah, let's do some recommendations.
You got a person, place, or thing you want to recommend?
I want to talk about
folk?
movies today. We have had the I have had the pleasure of going to the Carolina Theater.
Here in beautiful downtown Durham, North Carolina.
Adrienne is a member, and she dragged me along, and I got to see reissues of Alex Cox's Sid and Nancy and of The Man Who Fell to Earth, and both movies are just amazing. Sid and Nancy is a little bit depressing, as you might imagine.
A little bit.
Don't do drugs, kids.
There's not going to be a sequel. There's not going to be a Sid Nancy 2.
No, since everybody dies at the end. The ship sinks at the end.
Well, that's the true of all things.
It's
a great movie.
It really is. And Alex Cox, who did Repo Man, which is one of my favorite movies. This is it's a great movie, and I had never seen The Man Who Fell to Earth all the way through, And I realize why now, because there's so much nudity and sex in it, and lots of Bowie anatomy involved. And so I imagine they couldn't even put it on TV, but if they cut all that out, they'd have like a 10-minute movie.
Right.
But it is a great movie, and Bowie is very believable as an alien.
Right, it was typecasting.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So what's your recommendation?
My recommendation, I'm going to go with a thing. And I hate that I am the female member of this team, but my recommendation is going to be pretty stereotypical, and that it's going to be a household item. And that item is going to be Dawn detergent. I just want to tell you that Dawn detergent really is worth it, because it eats into oily substances and breaks them down in a way that other detergents do not, and they are not paying me. But
does it save baby ducks?
It does. And I can't believe it took them so long to come out with those commercials, because that's something I learned from an attorney at the EPA.
Wow.
I was at an event he was talking at, and somebody said, "You talk a little bit about oil spills and how do you handle oil spills and cleanups?" And he said, "We use Dawn detergent." And I was like, "Well, maybe I'll give that a try in my home."
Yes, indeed.
And it only took them 15, 20 years after that where they came out with the advertising campaign. But it really does, it's good stuff.
So movies and Dawn detergent.
There you go.
No TV shows this episode.
I'll try to do something not so
not about
Halloweenian.
All right, then. So that was it for us today. Singles Going Steady, number 006. Marshall Crenshaw, Whenever You're on My Mind, a fabulous single. I hope you will check it out or buy the record field day. And
check out those albums, from the last 2 decades, because they're very much worth your time.
And it's been great talking with you today, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
To learn more about the artists and recordings we just talked about, visit our website at zubrecords.com and click on the Singles Going Steady icon.
You'll also find links to the persons, places, and things we recommend, and much more.
You can find episodes of Singles Going Steady on our website or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Singles Going Steady is brought to you by the power and majesty of Zub Records. Zub Records. Smart sounds for sharp people.